Recently, I was flying back to Wyoming, and the person sitting next to me was a member of the Border Patrol. And he didn't know that I was a senator, but I was very curious about how things were going. He'd just been to a training session, and he'd been doing it for quite a while. And he was pretty depressed. I would say he had low morale. Told me that they could do a lot of things, but because there's rampant law breaking along the border, and he felt that orders from Washington kind of tied his hands, that they couldn't respond effectively. As a commander, I know you relied on your officers and your troops, and you developed plans and you executed missions, and in some very difficult situations for keeping the morale of the people that were under you going. Have you developed any plans for how you're going to check on the Border Patrol and see if there's some morale things that could be changed?
Sir, I mean, one of the things I've always done, learned from some of the finest leaders, I think certainly in the U.S. military, you got to get out and about. You got to get out and, figuratively speaking, kick the tires, look around. Interesting you should make that point. I was, just prior to my leaving active duty, because I worked so closely with Homeland Security and law enforcement, even though Mexico was not in my area of interest, I took a trip up to El Paso in uniform and just went to the port of entry and then met with some officers there, and just to thank them and to tell them from my position in the South they were doing a great job. Met with some of the Border Patrol folks, same thing. And when you say things like, listen, just how are things going, you know, pull out a tape recorder because you're going to find out. And that's, I think, a very, very important way to find out about things. Encourage people to speak truth to power from the bottom up. And certainly any time a whistleblower calls in and makes an accusation or makes a comment, it's very definitely worth listening. So that's how I do business. Sometimes you get an earful and wish you hadn't asked the question, but you should always ask the question.
I appreciate that. I used to be in small business, and sitting in an office didn't solve all the problems. You had to get out and see what was happening.